As I've noted in the previous sections of this chapter, unlike a traditional lecture series, each of the Climate Crisis 101 sections is designed to be short and to the point, usually less than 20 minutes in spoken length. You can either read those lectures, watch them as a YouTube video, listen to them as audio podcasts, or experience them in the lecture hall if you're enrolled in the UCSB course. So why did I design such an unusual course and make this material available in these different forms? As I noted in the previous two sections of this chapter, Climate Crisis 101 was, first and foremost, designed for accessibility. In this section, I want to further talk about the format of the Climate Crisis 101 work and why it's so unusual. For me, this is a deeply personal issue. For most of my life, I made my living as an artisan, as a furniture maker, the trade that I learned from my father. It was not until my early 40s that I returned to school to pursue a PhD. Hence, I was a furniture maker for longer than I've been a professor. As I noted in my introduction to this chapter, back when I was a furniture maker, I tried and failed to get access to the libraries at Princeton and the University of Pennsylvania. When the internet began to come on the scene in a big way in the 1990s, my mind kept returning to an outrageous idea. What if universities, their libraries, and their courses were completely open to anyone, anywhere? Presumably, as the internet could disseminate a variety of media types, you could not only make this possible, but make these courses accessible to anyone, regardless of whether they could, for example, see or hear. But, as an outsider, there was little that I could do to help realize this dream. However, in my early 40s, I entered a PhD program at Harvard. How I got there is a long story. I won't bother you with the details. If you happen to be interested, though, I'm not quite sure why you would be. In the introduction to my most recent book, which is available for free on my personal website, which is on writing a new environmental era and moving forward to nature, I tell that tale in some detail. In any event, flash forward a decade when I was, as I still am, a professor at the University of California at Santa Barbara. In perhaps a somewhat twisted turn of fate, Princeton University invited me to teach there for a year, where I held the chair as the Barron Visiting Professor in the Environment and Humanities at the Princeton Environmental Institute, PEI. Partly because of my earlier experience outside of Princeton when I was a furniture maker. As a professor, I felt strongly that education should be open. So I took the unusual step of uploading videos of my entire Princeton lecture series, which were completely free and open, and making them completely free and open to the public. As far as I was concerned, there was a certain gratifying and poetic justice in doing this at the school that had turned me away decades before. However, it began to dawn on me that, although available to the public, this material would not likely reach many people. The problem is that most people, even if interested in a topic, just don't have the time to sit through 20 or 30 hour-long lectures in a full series. I know that it sounds a little corny, but a university education really is something precious, wonderful, and quite a privilege, especially when you have the freedom to set aside 4 years of your life just to learn. Having earned my undergraduate degree and first master's degree by attending night classes over 2 decades, the fact that a 4-year education is a privilege is definitely not lost on me. It's a wonderful space and time just for learning. The traditional university lecture series emerged out of this space without the demands of a full-time job, or at least I hope that full-time students are not also working full-time jobs. The students have the luxury to take deep dives into subjects by attending lectures that last an entire term. Outside of a university setting, few people have anywhere near that sort of time, even if the material is available to them. Consequently, publishing an entire lecture series online, like I did at Princeton, will not likely reach that many people. How then do we reach a broad range of individuals? An obvious thought would be, the traditional genre of academia, which are books and articles. Another idea would be a newer form adopted by some scholars, the blog. However, in the age of digital media, information is more often than not disseminated by way of social media, which is now more popular than any of those genres by a long shot. And by many metrics, YouTube is not only by far the most popular social media service of all. It definitely is. The popularity of YouTube raised a question for me. What if we took a lecture series and presented it in the form of a series of relatively short YouTube videos? The idea was to present the material in digestible little bites rather than one huge monolithic lecture series. Hence, anyone with 10 or 20 minutes to spare and an internet, access, have interest in a particular topic, they could, find a credible university source. If they found it interesting, they could go on to watch other short talks in the lecture series. But the real question remained, would students and the public really want to watch YouTube videos on the sort of material that we present in a university setting? Natalie Wynn, who was for a time a PhD candidate in philosophy at Northwestern University, has a remarkably successful YouTube channel entitled ContraPoints, where she posts videos on such topics as what's wrong with capitalism. Astonishing, this video, which incidentally I heartily recommend, has been viewed nearly 2 million times. This is all the more striking given that it is essentially a 40-minute lecture broken into 2 YouTube videos of roughly equal length. As far as I'm concerned, Natalie Wynn and others have proven that people by the millions are electing to watch meaningful content on YouTube. Some of it quite like what we teach in university lectures. This strikes me as a potentially important way for professors to speak to the public. It is also worth noting that this approach potentially allows the lecturer to build a better relationship with the audience. In a traditional lecture, the speaker appears as a tiny person at the front of the room. It may be hard for them to even hear or see the face of the lecturer. However, on YouTube, speakers often appear just about as large as someone sitting across from you at a small table, speaking directly to you, seemingly looking right at you. Since we humans are hardwired to pick up on a range of subtle facial cues, this rather nicely replicates a face-to-face talk. And a good one, as the speaker is hardly disinterested, but rather is intently focusing on you, telling you something that they obviously think is important. If you look at the comments that YouTube personas like Natalie Wynn receive, it's clear that regulars to her channel often think of her as a friend. They almost always refer to her by her first name. When I began to look through comments like these, it became clear to me that many YouTube speakers were, somewhat surprisingly, at least I was initially surprised, connecting with their audience in a personal way. Consequently, with respect to educators like me, although it may sound counterintuitive on first hearing, showing a pre-recorded lecture may well help build a better relationship with students in the class. Well, I'm in the opinion that virtually all university material should be freely disseminated. The climate crisis is an especially timely and important issue. As far as I'm concerned, it is absolutely imperative that universities provide a comprehensive overview of the climate crisis, not only for our students, but the public as well. There are obviously a range of reasons why this is important. But as we'll see in other sections of Climate Crisis 101, it's especially urgent given that the fossil fuel affiliates are spending an enormous amount of money on the disinformation about the climate crisis. The reason is to discourage and encourage the denial of the science and delay much needed action. Consequently, as far as I'm concerned, it is crucial that each and every university offers a comprehensive course on the climate crisis. Ideally, it should be a campus-wide requirement. However, this raises 2 important questions. To whom should we be teaching it, and how should we be teaching it? The first of these questions has an obvious answer: to our students, of course. But should we also, given the urgency of the issue, be directing ourselves to the public as well? Since, as we shall see, fossil fuel affiliates are targeting the public and specific groups like K through 12 teachers and policymakers, shouldn't we also be taking on the role of directly educating these individuals as well? In many respects, this job has largely fallen to various media outlets, who sometimes report on our university research. The problem is that this sort of coverage is very different from a comprehensive overview of the topic that can be provided by a course like Climate Crisis 101. Hence, my goal is to create an exceptionally accessible university course on this crucial topic that is available to the public. This raises our second question: how should we be teaching it? In other words, how should material be structured to be informative, thought-provoking, and appealing both to students and the public? For over a decade now, efforts have been made to make university lectures available to the public. These range from simply uploading videos of an entire lecture series online, like I did back at Princeton, to full-fledged courses offered for university credit at places like Stanford, UC Irvine, via the Coursera platform. The problem with this approach is, as I've already noted, is that it seems unlikely that most members of the public would be willing to sit through many hours of lectures over 10 or more weeks. Hence, this approach, while potentially offering, a comprehensive overview of the climate crisis, risks failing when it comes to delivering it to the public at large. Enter YouTube. Posting lectures as a series of short YouTube videos is definitely an unusual step for a professor. To be completely honest, many, and I suspect most of my colleagues, don't take YouTube very seriously and may well look down on me for doing this. But to be equally honest, I am of the mind that YouTube is so much better than the mediums that we have had available to us in the past. And we need not stop with YouTube, as there are other mediums available to us, like the audio podcast. Consequently, Climate Crisis 101 is also available in this format as well. In short, Climate Crisis 101 is my most ambitious attempt to date at realizing the dream that I had decades ago when I was a furniture maker, to make higher education free and accessible to anyone, anywhere. My first attempt at doing this, uploading my Princeton lecture series, made clear to me that just making material available online was not enough. Instead, teachers like me need to make it accessible in a range of different ways. Because the climate crisis is such a timely and important issue, it is, as far as I am concerned, absolutely crucial that we do so. So this is the real reason that I chose to make Climate Crisis 101 such an unusual class.